So, I guess the first question would be, what music do you enjoy listening to the most? What are your general
Um,
music tastes?
I would have to say hip hop. I found hip hop to be my number one. Um, and it kind of goes down from there. I like EDM, I like country, I like um, a little bit of pop music. It just all depends. But I would say hip hop would be definitely my number one.
Okay. What do you play any instruments yourself?
No, I don't. I don't. I just kind of mess around with the computer. You
So,
know,
what was your biggest draw to music? Did it start at a young age?
It started in high school. I just got into keeping up with the latest hip hop records. Whether it be Jay-Z coming out with something or Rick Ross coming out with a new track. I always liked it. Always intrigued me to keep up with that and kind of see where the music industry is going, especially the hip hop game.
Okay, okay. How do you feel about mainstream popular music today? Do you feel that it all sounds the same? It's different? I'm talking top 40 hits that you would hear on the radio.
I think there's a great variety to them. There's definitely a little bit of the same ones. You always see the Katy Perry, you always see the Justin Bieber, you always see kind of the Drake, but that's always going to stay the same just because people love their kind of music, and that's nothing to hate at all. But I think, having said all of that, there's definitely other music that is underappreciated just because it's not in the top 40, it's not in the top charts, and there definitely should be, an alternative way to kind of show them, and that's why I'm interested in music and like hearing about the up and coming rappers or up and coming singers just to get a better knowledge of that and support them.
Now, do you think that that affects other artists? Like knowing that that's the only way to get on the radio is if you have a record like Katy Perry or a record like
I definitely think that. You can see it in, some like up and coming artists, the way they rap and the way they produce music, and then once they hit it big, they kind of switch over to like a more mainstream style, more not really themselves. Um, I can think of one. He really didn't change, but he kind of tailored himself. Meek Mill, he came out with All Eyes on You, and you really haven't seen an out like a song from him that is fit for the radio. But since he wants to get to that all-star status, what Drake and Jay-Z is, he kind of had to tailor himself to the radio so he can get more viewers and more artists, or just more popular um, fans, and just express himself in a different way, which it could be bad, it could be good, but we'll just have to wait and see.
okay. Is the music on the radio? Should it all be there? You think? Like, should there be music on the radio that's not on the radio right now?
Yeah, definitely. It depends on what kind of music we're talking about, though. You can't really play the dirty hip hop. I'm gonna, all those dirty hip hop
Yeah, yeah.
records. But at the same time, um, I feel like sometimes radio stations overplay or overplay certain songs when maybe I think DJs should give a song a chance rather than keep playing it over and over. That's what I find the one thing I hate about just listening to the radio. You hear the same song maybe in the morning as you do in the afternoon. It's always good to have a nice change up.
Got you. Do you believe that streaming services are helping the music industry or hurting the industry? You see people like Taylor Swift dropping her album entirely off Spotify because she feels that they're not paying artists enough money, whereas majority of the artists are still on these streaming services. So what is your opinion of?
I think they're definitely helping artists, especially up and coming artists like SoundCloud. You pretty much can base your whole marketing campaign off of SoundCloud, and depending on if people like your song, you're going to get noticed. There's also a negative side to that because all of the music piracy and artists getting cheaped out of people buying their albums. But at the same time, I think music streaming is definitely a good thing because I don't think certain artists would be in the spot they are without the streaming services that are available to them.
Now, do you think they have to begin to put better parameters on copyright law and money distribution when it comes to those services?
That would definitely help. Yeah, they're definitely. I think right now it's in between of figuring out what kind of laws and what kind of regulations they can impose on it.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on kind of what way the music industry is going, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. But right now, I think it's important that most artists get their recognition, make sure that all their music is protected.
Right. Do you think it's kind of like technology's ahead of the copyright laws?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, technology. I mean, to this day, it seems like it's always going to be a step ahead of the laws, just because of the process the laws take and the logistics of everything. But if there's a way to tighten the gap between technology and copyright law, I mean, it'd definitely help. Definitely be for the better.
I agree with you there. Do you think streaming services are going to increase, get bigger, expand, or, like I said earlier, you begin to see this downfall because artists are taking the music up?
I think it's always going to be there. I think it's always. I think it just depends on the type of artist and their beliefs and if what they think is right. You know, I think that music streaming has just gotten so huge, and I feel like every year there's always a new Spotify, there's always a new SoundCloud, there's always some way to put your music online, and it just depends on if the artist likes that kind of streaming service. If they don't, you know, it just depends. And plus the fans too. I feel like the fans definitely appreciate the streaming services. I know I do, because you get that music right away, and you're like, okay, I get to play this for a little bit before it comes mainstream.
Where do you think the industry is going to go from here? What steps you see now? They're in the EDM and that pop genre. Do you think it's going to stay there, or do you think it'll?
I mean, it's hard to tell now, but at the same time, it just depends on what I feel like it's all about the mainstream. It all depends on what people are in that certain time period are feeling. I mean, you saw it with the classic rock. You saw it with. Now you see it with the pop EDM. Who knows? Maybe hip hop gets in there in the mainstream. Maybe people will appreciate country even more. I mean, country's pretty big as it is. It just depends on what kind of music people are feeling in that time period. And you never know. I can't really pinpoint at where it's going. It just all depends on what the fans want.
Got you. Now, in your opinion, who do you think the next big artist will be, and why do you think that? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
One.
Yeah,
that's a tough one. Man, there are a lot of good artists recently that are coming up. You know, Bryson Tiller's one, and that dude can certainly sing. The Weeknd is, I mean, I consider him still up and coming just because he just released his first album, right? One of his first albums maybe, and he's just blown up after that. I mean, I haven't seen a bigger year from artists from The Weeknd, and now everyone knows who he is.
Right.
You didn't know him in January, but now you know him in September and October.
Right,
so, man, that one's tough.
Any local artists that you can think of?
Local artists.
Whether it be from home or from here in Syracuse?
Man, the on the spot thing is really killing me right now.
Fair enough. We'll move to the next one. Do you ever think record labels are going to completely go under, and it's just going to be strictly everyone recording their music independently?
I don't think so. Just because you see right now, record labels have a huge impact on what the artist can do. And if you want to go independent, you definitely gonna have to put a lot more work in on the business aspect, on getting the tours, on doing everything yourself. I mean, there's definitely going to be a fork in the road. There's going to be choices: either you go independent or you sign with a huge record label. I don't think they're necessarily going to evaporate from the music industry, but I can definitely see people wanting to go more independent solely for the reason that, hey, I did this myself. Why am I going to give all my stuff to them and have them want to filter it and kind of create their way of what I want to do? You know what I'm trying to say?
Okay. Well, that was it. Thank you very much.